You remember the Simca 1000, don't you? That peculiar little French sedan that somehow found its way into American driveways during the 1960 seconds, parked alongside Chevrolets and Fords like a foreign exchange student at a high school dance. But here's something that might surprise you. This modest four-door became one of the most successful European economy cars of its era, selling over 1.5 million units worldwide. Not bad for a car that most Americans have completely forgotten. Let me take you back to 1961. Kennedy was in the White House, the Berlin Wall was going up, and American cars were still sporting fins and chrome like there was no tomorrow. Meanwhile, in France, Simca was about to launch a vehicle that would challenge everything people thought they knew about small car design. The Simca 1000 wasn't just another economy car, it was Simca's answer to the wildly successful Renault Dauphine, and it represented a fundamental shift in how European manufacturers approached the compact car market. Why does this matter now? Because the Simca 1000 tells a fascinating story about an era when automotive boundaries were blurring, when European manufacturers were eyeing American markets with increasing confidence, and when a rear-engined sedan could actually be considered cutting-edge technology. This wasn't just another forgotten import. This was a car that competed directly with the Volkswagen Beetle, the Renault Dauphine, and even some British offerings, carving out its own niche in a crowded marketplace. The Simca 1000 represented something else, too, the twilight of American involvement in European automotive manufacturing. Chrysler had acquired control of Simca by 1963, making this little French sedan part of an American corporate empire. That connection would eventually lead to badge-engineered versions appearing in various markets, but the original 1000 remained distinctly European in character, philosophy, and execution. So, settle in. We're going to explore why this understated sedan deserves more than a footnote in automotive history, and why those of you who actually drove one probably have stories worth sharing. Topic 1. The birth of an unlikely competitor. The Simca 1000 didn't emerge from nowhere. By the late 1950 seconds, Simca had established itself as a credible manufacturer in Europe, primarily building Fiat-derived designs under license. But Henri Pigozzi, the company's founder, understood that to truly compete in the booming European market, Simca needed its own designs, its own identity. The project that became the 1000 started in 1957, with Simca's engineers facing a clear mandate: create a modern, affordable four-door sedan that could compete with Renault's rear-engined offerings while providing genuine practicality for growing families. The solution they developed was, in many ways, conventional for the era: a rear-engine, rear-wheel drive layout with a water-cooled four-cylinder engine mounted behind the rear axle. What made the Simca 1000 different from its competitors was its refusal to compromise on passenger space. While the Volkswagen Beetle offered limited rear seat room and the Renault Dauphine felt cramped, the Simca 1000 provided genuine seating for 4 adults, with a trunk in front where American cars would have their engines. The body design, penned by Simca's in-house team with input from Italian styling houses, was clean and modern without being revolutionary, a 3-box sedan that looked more conventional than the bulbous Dauphine or the quirky Beetle. When the Simca 1000 debuted at the Paris Auto Show in October 1961, it carried an engine of 944 cubic centimeters, producing a modest 32 horsepower. This wasn't going to set any speed records, but that wasn't the point. The 1000 was engineered for European cities, for narrow streets and expensive fuel, for families who needed transportation, not entertainment. Initial French pricing positioned the 1000 competitively against its primary rivals. Production began at Simca's Poissy plant near Paris, and within months, the little sedan was finding buyers across Europe. The timing was perfect. Europe's post-war economic boom was creating a vast middle class, hungry for affordable, reliable transportation, and the Simca 1000 fit that need precisely. Topic 2. Engineering, philosophy, and technical reality. Let's talk about what you actually got when you bought a Simca 1000. That rear-mounted engine, a water-cooled inline-4, sat behind the rear wheels, connected to a 4-speed manual transmission. The cooling system used a conventional radiator mounted in the engine bay, with air ducted in through grills below the rear window. It was more sophisticated than the Beetle's air-cooled setup, but also more complex. The suspension design revealed Simca's practical approach to engineering. Up front, unequal length wishbones with coil springs provided reasonable handling characteristics and a compliant ride. The rear used a live axle with coil springs and trailing arms, simple, durable, and easy to service. This wasn't exotic technology, but it worked, and it could be maintained by mechanics in small towns across Europe. Early models rode on 12-inch wheels wearing 145mm tires. The wheelbase measured 236 centimeters, contributing to reasonable interior space while keeping the overall length manageable. The car weighed approximately 750 kilograms light by any standard, which helped extract reasonable performance from that modest engine. Braking was all-drum initially, which was standard for economy cars of the era. The steering used a rack and pinion setup, providing direct feedback that some drivers found reassuring and others found nervous at highway speeds. That rear weight bias, inherent in the rear engine design, made the 1000 prone to oversteer if you lifted off the throttle mid-corner, a characteristic it shared with every rear-engined car from the Volkswagen to the Porsche 911. By 1963, Simca introduced the 1000 Good Luck model, which offered improved interior trim and slightly more power, now 36 horsepower. These weren't dramatic changes, but they showed Simca's commitment to evolving the design. The company understood that in the competitive European market, standing still meant falling behind. Topic 3. The American connection and Chrysler's involvement. Here's where the story gets particularly interesting for those of us on this side of the Atlantic. Chrysler Corporation had been gradually acquiring shares in Simca since the early 1962, eventually gaining majority control in 1963. This made the Simca 1000 part of Chrysler's international portfolio, though the French company maintained considerable operational independence. Chrysler saw value in Simca's European expertise and market position. While Detroit was building land yachts with V8 engines displacing over 6 liters, Simca was perfecting the art of extracting maximum utility from minimal resources. It was a different philosophy entirely, but Chrysler recognized that European markets demanded European solutions. The Simca 1000 never became a major force in the American market, though some examples were imported. Americans who bought them discovered a car that felt utterly foreign, not just in its mechanical layout, but in its entire philosophy. The 1000 was designed for expensive fuel, narrow streets, and limited parking. It was optimized for a world where cars were tools, not status symbols. Chrysler's involvement did lead to some interesting developments. The company invested in expanding Simca's production capacity and encouraged the development of sportier variants. By the mid-1960s, Simca was producing the 1000 Rally, a homologation special with a more powerful engine that could actually hold its own in competition. But the base 1000 remained what it had always been, a practical, economical sedan for European buyers. Topic 4. Evolution through the 60s. The Simca 1000 evolved considerably during its production run, which extended until 1978. By 1964, Simca introduced a larger engine option, 1,118 cubic centimeters, producing 45 horsepower. This provided noticeably better performance while maintaining reasonable fuel economy. The 1965 model year brought disc brakes to the front wheels on higher specification models, a significant safety improvement that reflected evolving standards across the industry. The interior received updates too, with better materials and more thoughtful ergonomics addressing early criticisms about the car's austere cabin. Perhaps the most significant development came in 1967 with the introduction of the Rally 1, which featured an engine displacing 1,118 cubic centimeters but tuned to produce 56 horsepower. This was followed in 1970 by the Rally 2 with an engine of 1,294 cubic centimeters, producing 82 horsepower. These sporting variants proved that the basic 1000 platform had potential beyond mere transportation. The base model continued alongside these performance variants, receiving incremental improvements to keep it competitive. By the early 1972s, you could buy a Simca 1000 with features that would have seemed luxurious on the original 1961 model: reclining front seats, improved heating and ventilation, better soundproofing, even an optional automatic transmission in some markets. Production numbers tell the story of the 1000's success. Simca built approximately 1,642,000 examples over the car's 17-year production run. That's a significant achievement for any model, especially one that faced fierce competition throughout its life from Renault, Fiat, Volkswagen, and increasingly Japanese manufacturers. Topic 5. Driving dynamics and real-world character. Those of you who actually drove a Simca 1000, and I suspect some of you watching did, know that the experience was distinctly European. The steering was light, perhaps too light at highway speeds, but perfect for maneuvering through congested city streets. The engine note was always present, a busy four-cylinder thrum that reminded you constantly that the power source was directly behind your ears. That rear engine layout created handling characteristics that demanded respect. Push too hard into a corner and the 1000 would understeer predictably. But lift off the throttle mid-corner and suddenly you'd be dealing with snap oversteer as weight transferred forward and those lightly loaded rear wheels lost grip. Experienced drivers learned to work with these characteristics, but they caught inexperienced drivers by surprise. The ride quality was surprisingly compliant, especially compared to some British economy cars of the era. The suspension absorbed rough pavement without excessive harshness, though body roll in corners was noticeable. Wind noise at highway speeds was considerable. This was a small car with limited sound insulation, after all. Interior space was genuinely impressive for the car's external dimensions. 4 adults could travel in reasonable comfort for short to medium distances, though longer journeys revealed the limitations of thin seats and modest legroom. The dashboard was simple, almost austere, with a speedometer, fuel gauge, and little else on base models. Climate control meant opening a window or turning a knob to let more hot air from the engine bay blow through the cabin. Fuel economy was the 1000's strong suit. Drivers regularly achieved 40 to 50 miles per gallon in mixed driving, exceptional even by today's standards. This made the car remarkably inexpensive to operate, which was precisely the point. Topic 6. Market position and competition. Understanding the Simca 1000 requires understanding what it competed against. The Volkswagen Beetle was the obvious rival, rear-engined, air-cooled, and by the 1962, a proven commodity in markets worldwide. The Beetle had simplicity and reputation on its side, but the Simca offered more interior space and a more conventional sedan body. Renault's Dauphine represented another major competitor, particularly in French-speaking markets. The Dauphine was also rear-engined but felt more cramped inside and suffered from quality control issues that damaged its reputation. The Simca 1000 positioned itself as more modern, more practical, and more reliable. British offerings like the Morris Minor and Ford Anglia used conventional front-engine, rear-drive layouts and appealed to buyers who distrusted rear-engine designs. Fiat's 850 was similar in concept to the Simca, but smaller and less practical for families. By the late 1960s, Japanese manufacturers were entering European markets with cars like the Toyota Corolla and Datsun 1000, offering conventional engineering, improving quality, and increasingly competitive pricing. The Simca 1000, now approaching the end of its first decade of production, faced challenges from these modern front-engine, front-drive designs that represented the industry's future direction. In France, the Simca 1000 held its own throughout the 1960s, consistently ranking among the top-selling models. Export markets proved more challenging. The car sold reasonably well in Spain and some other Mediterranean countries, but never achieved Beetle-level penetration in most European markets. Topic 7. The Rally Heritage and Performance Legacy. While the base Simca 1000 was designed as practical transportation, the model developed an unexpected reputation in motorsport. The rally variants, particularly the Rally 2 introduced in 1970, proved surprisingly competitive in period rallying and circuit racing. That Rally 2, with its 1,294 cubic centimeter engine producing 82 horsepower, could achieve speeds approaching 107 miles per hour. Impressive for a car that shared its basic architecture with a shopping sedan. The rear engine layout, liability on the street, became an asset on loose surface rally stages where experienced drivers could use throttle-induced oversteer to rotate the car through corners. Simca actively supported motorsport programs in France and other European markets, recognizing that competition success could enhance the entire model range's reputation. The rally models featured distinctive styling touches, bold striping, blacked-out grilles, distinctive wheels that made them immediately recognizable. These performance variants created a halo effect for the entire 1000 range, suggesting that even the modest base model came from a company that understood driving dynamics. Whether this translated into significantly increased sales is debatable, but it certainly enhanced Simca's sporting credentials. The Simca 1000 represents something we don't often see anymore, an honest economy car designed without pretension, built competently, and sold to people who needed transportation more than they needed status. It wasn't exotic, it wasn't particularly exciting in base form, but it worked, and for over 1.5 million buyers worldwide, that was exactly enough. Looking back now, from an era of computer-controlled everything and cars that can park themselves, the Simca 1000 seems impossibly simple. 4 cylinders, rear engine, manual transmission. No power steering, no power brakes, no electronic assistance of any kind, just you, the car, and the road. For those of you who owned one, drove one, or worked on one, I'd genuinely like to hear your stories. Drop a comment below and tell us about your experiences with the Simca 1000. Did you love it? Hate it? Have adventures in it? I know there are stories out there, and this community is exactly the place to share them. If you found this deep dive into automotive history interesting, consider subscribing to the channel. We're exploring forgotten cars, overlooked models, and the vehicles that shaped the industry without necessarily getting the recognition they deserved. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. It helps more than you might think, and it tells me that these deep explorations into automotive history resonate with viewers who remember when cars were simpler, when driving required skill and attention, and when a car like the Simca 1000 could provide reliable transportation for hundreds of thousands of miles without ever being remarkable. Thanks for watching. Keep those memories alive, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll explore another forgotten chapter of automotive history. Until then, keep the shiny side up.